Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We got an exciting chat for you, and I know, just chatting with these folks a couple minutes beforehand, I know that it's gonna be a fun one. So I'm excited. You guys should get excited too. Um, but with that, and as folks are continuing to come into the chat, my name is Jenna Quinn, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni and Affinity Engagement to welcome you all to this edition of the 49er Industry Chat. And we just need to let everyone know that this chat is being recorded, which really what that means for you is that this is going to be available to you on demand at our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. And so feel free to, watch it again, share it with a friend or a colleague or anyone you think might be able to get something good out of this chat today. And if you are here with us live today, you can go ahead and submit any questions that you have using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You don't need to wait until the end. Just feel free anytime a question pops into your head, just go ahead and enter it there, and we'll get that on over to our moderator today, who I am excited to introduce, Lisa Backlund. Hello.
Hi, how are you guys?
Doing good, doing good. So Lisa is a 27-year-old from Sweden, and she moved to California almost 7 years ago to study abroad, and the sunshine made it impossible to leave. Undergrad in communication and marketing from CSULB, and is now currently a graduate student in the sports management program. She grew up playing all sorts of sports and has always been extremely engaged in the world of sports, whether that has been through playing it herself or keeping herself up to date with developments, results, and inquiries, or working in the industry. She loves traveling, spending time with her family and friends, and is not afraid to challenge herself. Lisa, I will turn this on over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jenna. So excited for this chat and to have Jason here. I'll do a little introduction of him. So Jason is the public address for announcer for the South Bay Lakers, the G League affiliate of the Los Angeles Lakers organization. In his 9 seasons with the Lakers, he has had the opportunity to announce games at Crypto.com Arena for the LA Lakers, announce during the 2018 NBA All-Stars in Los Angeles, and get his name on a Lakers champions ring. Jason was also in the stadium announcers for the LAFC's inaugural 2018 season at the former Bank of California Stadium, and has announced for the LA Sparks and San Diego Padres. Jason earned his master's degree in sports management from the beach in 2009, LT 13. And when he's not on the mic, he is helping advance the lives of college students as a higher education administrator, and has been doing that for 18 years. Very impressive, and welcome, Jason. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you, Lisa, and I appreciate the warm welcome, and I want to say hello to all the 49ers out there. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I say we just jump straight into some questions. We can just start with some of your background and work experience.
Yeah, so like you mentioned in the introduction, I mean, I've spent as I tell people, my day job. I spent 18 years working in higher education, going many years back, actually in Long Beach, in the city of Long Beach, right after undergrad. I started working at DeVry University, located in Long Beach, there for some years. And then I moved on and worked at other colleges and universities. And somewhere along the line, I would say, I'm not going to bore you with all of my bios. I'm just going to give you the highlight version that folks are probably interested in. I started early on in my education at Cerritos College. And so I'm a local boy. I was raised here in Southern California, raised in Southgate, then in Downey, and went to Warren High School, as some of your Long Beach students or alums probably from the area. And from there went on to Cerritos. And I think where the announcing came from was from really this being at the Cerritos College radio station and having my own show and doing that for a couple of years. And it was really a dream of mine ever since I was a kid. And it's something that I was thinking of pursuing. And so at some point transferred to Cal State Fullerton. So I know, sorry, I'm also Titan. I was a Titan before I was a 49er. Don't ask me off the stage now. But I went to Cal State Fullerton there, got my bachelor's degree in speech communication.
Oh,
And
wow.
so then after that, I got into a career in higher ed. It's something I was always passionate about. But I always kept my foot in somehow in announcing or radio. And I used to have my own show out in the San Bernardino County at a small radio station there on the weekends and for no money, just to volunteer, and did that for a few
Yeah.
years. And had nothing to do with sports. It was mostly a political talk show and news talk show, and produced and hosted my own show there, and it was a ton of fun. And then at some point, I also worked for a website, actually when they first started back in 2009, I want to say, 2008, something like that, titled LakersNation.com. And many Laker fans out there who are familiar with Lakers Nation, that was one of the original, I don't know what you want to call it, talent, I guess you could say, when they were just getting it off the ground. I'm sure there's some old YouTube videos of me that exist somewhere if you Google it or look it up. And it was doing the on-camera work and got to be involved in covering Lakers practices and Lakers events and interviewing players and all of that stuff.
Wow.
And so there was a point in my career, and you're probably wondering, some people wondering, well, higher ed and why sports management? So there was a point in my career, probably back in 2006, 7, where I thought of maybe pivoting and getting into sports. And I heard about this amazing program. And so I enrolled in 2007. Yes, I'm learning Team 13. For those of you, I don't know if you have any other LTs on here, but LT 13. And so was in the program, had an amazing time. And, I can provide more detail about that. And from there, though, when I graduated in 2009, something called one of the big recessions that just hit. And so there wasn't a lot of work. It was very tough for graduates. Fortunately, I had a pretty good job in higher ed. And because of my master's degree, it actually allowed me to get promoted and stay within my job. And actually, that's helped me along the way. And I've stayed in higher ed. However, I don't know how much detail you want me to go on. It might be one of your future questions, but then at some point,
go on.
Yeah. Then at some point I landed with the South Bay Lakers. And so that was in 2015, and been with them ever since, 8 years, going into my 9th season. But that's kind of the short version. But I'm happy to go into detail.
Oh, we will definitely dive deeper. But let's just jump back to your experience at the Cal State Long Beach and the sports management program. How was your experience? I know we talked a little bit about it, but just talk about your time there a little.
Yeah, a fantastic program for a lot of reasons. I mean, number one, the faculty were great. The campus was great. I've always wanted to go to Cal State Long Beach. It was my first choice when I was going to transfer from Cerritos College as an undergraduate student. But I went to Fullerton, which was great as well. But it was nice to be at Long Beach State. Program was great. I can tell you that in terms of my internships, because everyone loves to know, well, what did you do while you're in the program? And those of you that know, in this program, it encompasses both the academic piece, but also the real world experience that gets you out there. So I interned for the LA Galaxy at the time in 2007, 2008. And that was when David Beckham was still on the team. So that was kind of a highlight to kind of see that up close.
That was a
Beckham
good
era.
time.
Yeah, it was a Beckham era. The year I was there, the team sucked, but
Then they just
David Beckham was a player, but the team wasn't very good.
I know.
But that was the year he was there. There was a lot of excitement around that. At Dignity Health, back then, they was still Home Depot Center at the time, and so that was fun.
How was was it always packed?
Oh,
Tickets sold out? Yeah.
Absolutely. I did game operations. So because I was working full time, some of the students were full-time graduate students or just all in the graduate program. I was still working full-time, so I could not do a daytime internship. So the flexibility, which is what I love about the program, is I would go to work and I would go straight to Home Depot Center. And my days ended up being like 15, 16-hour days during grad school, because I'd have to go into work early at 7 a.m. to make up for having to leave maybe at 2 to be at the Home Depot Center at 3 for a game that starts at 7 to not get home till probably 11:30 at night, right? And those of you that work sports for a living know that they're long days and long hours. And so, and it wasn't glamorous. I went from being a manager by day at my day job and then going there and rolling up my sleeves and opening boxes and giveaways and preparing the stuff, and it was game ops. It was game ops, but you learn in the trenches, right? Of what it.
Oh, you really do. That's so true.
Of how to put together a large scale event, right? Which has helped me even now in my work here in higher education, which those of us that work in higher ed, I mean, it feels like that's what you're doing a lot of the time, putting on these large events and programs. So there's a lot of crossover. I went on to intern for the LA Kings after that, and that was a lot of fun during the 2008-9 season, I believe it was, 2008. Tell people I'm bad luck because we also were not very good that year. And so, I shouldn't say that on here, but if you, but yeah, it was a wonderful experience. There I was in their public relations department. So that was a lot of fun to do PR, switched up, suit and tie every day, right? When you do PR. And again, and same thing, I was on a game day intern, so I didn't work in the office. I worked game days.
Yeah.
And ton of fun. Get to meet the broadcasters, get to go in the locker rooms, get to take, interview notes, game day notes, all that stuff, working at the press box. I've told people I've been to Staples Center, now crypto.com, went more times than you would want to know. And I probably know that building behind like the back of my hand.
Right.
But that was a ton of fun and learned a lot about public relations there. And then also interned there at Cal State Long Beach, did marketing there for the marketing department for a lot of their athletic events there. So yeah, that's a little bit about my time. It was a wonderful time there.
Yeah, I think that's really impressive. I think you really took advantage of the opportunities that the program gives you, like the networking and the connections and the internships. And I think you really used all of those opportunities and got amazing internships. Really good and impressive. So right after you graduated, did you jump straight into the Lakers then?
No, so what happened was I stayed in higher education, right? And so I did that for a little while. I was on the side doing some other things in radio and just kind of just because it was a passion project. LakersNation.com kind of came about around that time. So I always enjoyed journalism and broadcasting ever since I was an undergrad. It was kind of a passion of mine. So that was wonderful to interview people. And so working with them was a lot of work. But I always tell people the highlight, and to this day, one of the highlights of my career was to be able to have a sit-down, one-on-one interview with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, wow.
And that was around 2010, 2011, and for Lakers Nation. And it was a wonderful sit-down interview. Kind gentleman, just at the time, he had just written a children's book. And so we talked about that. He's just becoming an author. Yeah. And one of the wonderful stories about that is he has this children's book. And so before we start the interview, I bought a book. My wife at the time, well, my wife still, at that time, my wife, we were expecting our firstborn. And so we already knew what we were going to name her. And so I asked Kareem if he would sign the book and sign it for her. And so he did, and he signed it for my daughter, Gianna, and it's still there. And so it was very, very special. Yeah. And so that was my angle with sports, which is I really enjoyed that piece of it, of journalism. So I got to talk to Jerry West and have interviewed with Jerry West, former general manager, VP for the Lakers, and all this stuff during the time to really get involved. Didn't get to interview Kobe, but I always tell people it was fun to be at the practices. When he would come out at the old Lakers practice facility and be there in the scrum and 2 feet away and getting sound bites and all that stuff from him. So that was fun. And then I guess I'll kind of bridge over to Lakers, how that happened. And so in 2015, the San Diego Padres actually held an open casting call for a public address announcer, a stadium announcer out in Petco Park. And a buddy of mine saw the announcement, sent it to me, said, "Oh, you should totally do this. You should go down there. They're going to do an audition on the Saturday from like 8 to whatever until they run out of people or something, right? You have to be 8 a.m. I don't want to do it." But they pushed me to do it. It's a good story, I think, for people, for students and anyone listening to, about taking opportunities, even sometimes if you're too lazy or not feeling it. Because that was me. I'm like, I don't want to drive to San Diego, and I don't want to move. I'm like, I don't want to, I just had a kid, I have a small family, and we just bought a home and whatever. So they dragged me down there. No, we're going to go. So we went there. We drove down to San Diego on a Saturday morning. I get there, and there's about 200 people or so wrapped around the ballpark. They lined us up like American Idol status. I was number 373 in line. They only accepted 400 people showed up for this. I mean, this is how people want these types of days.
Yeah, it's competitive.
They're very competitive. Yeah. So I was in line from about 8:30 in the morning, and I didn't leave till 4 o'clock in the afternoon for probably a 90-second audition. Okay. And after that is like, see you later. Here you go. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
We'll be in touch. And a week later, they dwindled it down to, I guess, their top 30 or 40 people they really like to invite them back to this event. I was one of them. They invited me back. They had like a preseason event. This is right before the season starts. It was like another kind of an audition. Then they would call back top 20. I was called back for top 20. When they got to the top 20, and they were kind of building the social media marketing piece of it too. The Padres
Yeah.
were also kind of trying to, they were having fun with it to try to garner
Mhm.
advertising. When it got to top 20, that's when I got a little nervous. I'm like, oh shoot,
That's pretty
what's going
good.
to happen here? And so then we got to do a preseason game or something. I think it was at University of San Diego. Then they dwindled to the top 10. I made the top 10. And the top 10 candidates got to do an actual game, opening day
Yeah.
game or opening week game at San Diego. So I got to announce it for 5 innings of one of their opening games with the Padres versus the Dodgers, which was
Yeah.
fun because I'm a huge Dodger fan.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, and so that was part of that audition. Then after that, they were going to pick, I think, 2 or 3 finalists. So I didn't get to there. So needless to say, I got to the top 10 of these
Still
people.
very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But the moral of that story is, so it doesn't work out, which is, yeah, I was a little bummed, but at the same time, like, well, I don't know if I wanted to move down to
Yeah.
San Diego quite yet. But because of that, and people found out about it, even my local newspaper in Downey, they wrote a little story, Downey local guy competing for the thing. Fast forward now to about 4 months later, 4 or 5 months later, this editor from the newspaper, who I never met in person, by the way,
Mhm.
and this is the serendipitous part of all of this. He's like, hey, I saw this on Twitter. The South Bay Lakers, or not at the time, they were the Defenders, the LA Defenders
Yeah.
was their name. They're looking for a PA announcer. I thought of you because I remember about the San Diego competition. And I'm like, oh, okay, I saw this. And they didn't really advertise it a lot. So had it not been for this person writing the story, had I not even tried to audition for the Padres, I may not have ever found out about this opportunity. So to kind of wrap a bow around this, I show up to this audition at the Lakers facility. There was about 80 to 90 people, I think, that auditioned.
Wow.
And then I came back for one more. And then a couple of weeks later, they told me I got it. And it was very cool. Yeah, it was. So
Yeah.
sometimes the opportunity you don't get, I think, is the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Opens up an opportunity right after that that could be even better. And
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
did. No knock on the Padres, but hey, I live in LA. I'm a Laker fan,
Mhm.
and this is kind of a dream opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to make sure to share that today with people that are listening, because I always share that with students and share that with people. Again, right? Sometimes you're bummed out because you don't get something that you thought you really wanted, but because you tried and you put yourself out there, something could come around, right? And you don't know when that day comes, but I was very fortunate. And let me tell you, it's been an amazing experience. They're a wonderful organization.
Yeah.
They're a family-oriented organization, and they treat their folks well. South Bay Lakers, now we are part of the Los Angeles Lakers family, and they treat you as such. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
No, I think it's very important to just say yes to the opportunities and chances you're given, and you never really know what's coming out of it. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but something greater happens, like for you. So amazing. So just like run us through how does a typical day in your position look like?
Yeah, so typical day. So we have South Bay Lakers season starts around mid-November. So we just started about a week ago, and it goes through the end of March, a little bit shorter. We have about 50 games total, and usually about 25 home games, so a little shorter than the NBA season schedule. So what a typical day looks like, I think for me, it's not as cumbersome as it is for folks that probably work day to day at the game, but I'll usually get a script and get information about the upcoming game from our game entertainment group. So when you are a public address announcer, this is for anyone that's interested in working in game ops or game entertainment, whatever they call it within these teams, you are really part of that game entertainment or game ops team, so to speak. And so those are my bosses. So I report to those folks there within the Lakers, who both run game entertainment for Lakers Down at Crypto, and then the team also runs everything that happens, all the activations and game entertainment for South Bay. So it really is one team, which is great. So I'll get information from them during the week. Like, here's the script, here's what's coming up. Sometimes they change some things, so I can get a read in at home and in my free time, before I go into the actual facility. Game days, typically they're at 7 o'clock. down at this is my quick promo for the South Bay Lakers, down at the UCLA Health Training Center, right? So if you haven't been, beautiful practice corporate office slash home facility for South Bay Lakers. It's an amazing facility right off of Nash Street there on the other side of LAX. And so that's where we play. And I get there usually about an hour to an hour and a half before the game to make sure that I've got everything I need for my script, make sure I review stuff with my game entertainment person there, supervisor, but also just as importantly, working with all the guys and gals at the table, as I like to say. And so when you're a public address announcer in basketball, what's pretty cool is you're actually on the court, practically at the table, right? Where in baseball, you're up in a booth, and soccer, you're up in a booth, and football, you're up in a booth. You know, hundreds of feet away. Here you're right there, they're falling on top of you, right? And so the action is literally inches away, and that's a lot of fun. And so that my girls like it because when they're watching a game on TV, then they can see dad because they're walking right by, right? So that's kind of cool. So yeah, Mighty's checking in with the team at the table as they're getting all of the starters, getting the starting lineups. I think the most important thing, if you're an announcer, for those of you that are into announcing or broadcasting and all that, is name pronunciation. If I have no other advice, I tell people anybody at the table can make a mistake, but no one will hear about it. The moment I make a mistake, it's out over the loudspeaker and I can't take it back. I look bad. Everyone looks, so even if it's not my mistake, if it goes out over the loudspeaker, it's the guy that announced it, right? So as much as you can, you always want to double check with the public relations team on both teams on pronunciations. Don't assume, because I've assumed and made that mistake, and the players will remind you. They'll send somebody to tap you on the back and say, "Hey, it's not the way you say it," and they're like, so I think those things are important. Pronunciation is key. That's, if I don't do anything else right, I think that's the number one thing for me. And getting the starters ready, because as a public address announcer, you're the first thing, quite frankly, that the fans hear. And I think if you talk to any PA person that does any professional sports, that's the key. When the show goes on and the script goes, that's the first thing that they hear, the big welcome to the arena, to the stadium, and you're the voice really for every announcement and every welcome. So it's a little bit of pressure, and then you kind of ease into it. But that's really the preparation that happens kind of going into the game, is getting ready for that, the opening announcement and into the game.
So interesting. Kind of leads into what do you find the most interesting about your job, or if you could talk a little bit about some challenges that you have been facing.
I think most interesting part about the job, what would I say is the most, I tell people I love my job with the Lakers because I get all the fun of being part of the Lakers organization without the politics. I don't work there Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I have my own 8 to 5 job and all that. And so, they have to do all that. I get the fun part. I come in when the fun begins, which is kind of cool, right? So that's why it's hard for me to talk about challenges, so to speak, when everyone there is pretty great. So that's what makes it, I think. And this is just in general, I think, aside from the Lakers, and this goes for anyone listening that's interested in whether on camera, radio, sports broadcasting, sports reporters, play-by-play, all that kind of stuff, just more encompassing in that way. It's pressure because you're always looked at as, does this person have the voice for it? Do they have the type of voice that we want? Do they have the type of face? I mean, that's just a reality, right? I'm getting into kind of the underbelly sometimes of broadcasting, and there sometimes you do face, I not with the Lakers, but I have experiences in the past where, let's put it this way, when you're putting that your artwork, and it really is your art when you are in entertainment and in that way, and you're performing, because it is a performance, you're going to be criticized. You need to have thick skin, because they're not just criticizing, a report that you wrote, they're literally criticizing the way you sound and look. And so, and then we can have a discussion on whether that's fair or not, but that's the reality of the business. And I have a lot of friends that have gone into the business all full in and have had a hard time, with that. And so there's that dynamic as well to face. And it's happened to me. I'll never forget, to share a very, intimate moment when I was doing Lakers Nation. And I think this is important for people to hear this, and that's why I bring it up. When I was with Lakers Nation, I was putting out my first YouTube videos, and YouTube is nasty. I tell people, don't go on Twitter, don't go on X and read all the comments. it'll really mess
Yeah.
with you. And I've seen
Yeah.
it really does, especially again when you put yourself out there. And I did a video, and I'll never forget this. I was just getting started, and I started looking at the comments, which is the most awful thing you can do. And then someone said, "This guy's voice doesn't match his face." I have no idea what they meant. I have an idea. You can fill in the blank, right? But people are cruel online. They still are. And this is well over 10 years ago. So I bring that up because when you put your talent out there, I tell people, especially in broadcast, you will have those comments. And now maybe 20 years ago, that wasn't so easy. But with social media and all of that, of course, it's there, it's live. People are being nasty. People will love you. So, all that to say, I think that's the challenge.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
how to always stay on top of your game, knowing I have to sound a certain way, knowing that I need it because the next person could be right behind. It's a very competitive. I don't take my job at Lakers for granted because you never know, right? You never know what happens. And so the business is difficult. LAFC, I'll give you an example. I didn't mention that, but I was the public address announcer, their first public address announcer when they opened up the stadium. And I'll share that quick story, which is another great story too, because people think, I'm like, oh, well, who did you know? It was your Lakers connection. I didn't know anyone. And this was now 2017 in the fall, about 6 years ago, right before the LAFC was about to launch. And I heard about this new soccer team. And so my first thing was like, well, they're probably going to need an announcer. So I'm going to throw myself in there. I've been doing Lakers for a few years. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And so I found names, I researched, I emailed, I got to someone finally in PR. They said, oh, thank you. Get back to us in January. So I got back. So I kept bugging them. It's just a story of bugging people, going in blind, didn't know anyone. So eventually I think they were ready to talk. And it was probably literally just a little over a month before they were going to start the season and the team in 2018. I mean, it was like a startup. And so I get a call from one of the head guys there. He says, hey, can we get on the phone, do a quick little phone audition and interview? Great, did that. He says, we want to invite you and two other people. We're doing some auditions in the stadium on this day. You show up and want to, again, see what you sound like and all of that, and have you do some reads. Went in the stadium, did some reads, all that stuff. And got on there, did the whole thing, and got the job, got the gig. And it was incredibly exciting to be able to open up the stadium and do all of that, and just the buzz around this, what LAFC has become now, and all of that. So season goes through, everything is great. And so there and that's one thing when you're doing these kinds of gigs. With the Lakers, I'm on staff. I am a part-time staff member of the Los Angeles Lakers organization, right? So that's pretty cool. And they like to treat their people that way, which I completely love. And some teams, some organizations, you're on a contract. You're on a year-to-year contract. Or you are on a 1099, as they say, where you're just a subcontractor, right? You're invoicing them and they're just paying you per game. And that was the deal with LAFC the first season. Like, you know what? I wasn't technically an employee, but they were just, I would invoice them, they would pay me for the games. And so at the end of the season ends, and then a month later, as you always don't know, especially after the first season, if they're going to want you back or not. And from what I can share that by the end of the year, they decided to pick somebody else and go with someone else as their public address announcer after that. Nothing went wrong. Nothing happened. I didn't say or do anything. There wasn't some fight or anyone. But the reason I bring this up is, right, there's highs and lows. I was very bummed, very bummed. I really envisioned myself being like, wow, this is a brand new team. I get to, be the announcer here, and you will lose out. This is Los Angeles. So the pros and cons about being in LA is that there's a lot of opportunities in LA, but there's also 10 times many people in LA that want it and want to be in this business in sports and entertainment. So all that to say as advice to folks listening is stay on your toes, be ready, treat everyone with respect. And sometimes even when you dot your I's and cross your T's, it may still not work out and it may not be anything that you did. It's just the nature of the business like this when you're in voice overs or entertainment or reporting, where they go on with someone else that they just sounded better, or it matches what they look for. But it is what it is. You move on. And so, but I just wanted to really share that because I think that's important for folks.
No, absolutely. And thank you for sharing. I think that's very helpful and needed for people to hear about too. Let's see here. I have a question. So how is it like to work with players that aspire to make it to the NBA? And can you talk about how fulfilling and inspiring it is to see the players actually make it to the next step?
That's an excellent question because I talk a lot about this. I'm glad you asked me that.
Mhm.
The G League is an amazing league, and it's really cool because of that reason.
Yeah.
And it's I'll say one of the best things that happened within the NBA and the G League was a few years ago when they started the two-way contracts that players can now sign. Because keep in mind, when this league started, as many folks know, it's no secret, minor league baseball players, G League players on average don't make a lot of money. I mean, you make more money working at Starbucks full time than you would, quite frankly, as a G League player or minor league baseball player. I
Mhm.
believe the average salary has gone up, but when I first started, the average salary was between $20,000 to $25,000 a year.
Oh,
It might be up to the $30,000 to
yeah.
$40,000 range. You can look it up, but I think it's something. Imagine Southern California, you're a grown person. A lot of
Yeah.
folks have families, and so this is this, and you have to train. So a lot of them have other
Mhm.
jobs. I've
Yeah.
known players that are substitute teachers. They have their own businesses. They're same thing in baseball, minor league baseball. They're really trying to make ends meet. This is something that they're hoping for, but to survive, especially in the big city, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And so one of the great things I think the NBA did was to say, okay, we're going to reward some of the top players a little bit better now, and allow them an opportunity to make a sustainable wage, a good wage for talented players that are in the six-figure range, right? And that's what the two-way players are. And for those that aren't familiar, a two-way player basically is someone that is signed to play either in the NBA and in the G League. And those guys, they're super busy because a lot of times they're sitting on the bench in the NBA team and they might come in if there's an injury. But
Yeah.
on their off days, when everyone else is off, if there's a G League game going, you're playing the South Bay game. So there's not as many days off for them. So they're really
Yeah.
hustling in these two-way teams. With players, it's a lot about it's a lot. I always tell people I think the number one thing that I see on why sometimes they quite don't make it is the size. In basketball, the size of a player probably matters a lot more, the height, than in any other sport. It could really be the difference between making it and breaking it. But it's so great to see these players and their families there. They love being there. They love the environment of playing G League basketball. I think sometimes they maybe try a little too hard because they know they need to impress. So you
Yeah.
see the excitement, I think, and it could get into basketball that sometimes might get a little sloppy because they're so excited and trying to impress. So I think the ones that do the best are the ones that can hold their composure, and just play their game. Um,
Mhm.
but it's exciting since I've been there to see all these players Alex Caruso, who's now doing great in the NBA, and he was right there with us at the South Bay team. And Jordan Clarkson, I remember when I first started with the Defenders, was with us. And so it's great to see these players move on into the NBA. I wish it was more of them, but it's so competitive that it's really, really hard. There's only so many spots. And
Yeah.
so it's also a lot of fun to see the children of former big NBA players, there.
Yeah.
I mean, guys like John Stockton, who are legends. I mean, his son, David Stockton, was in the league for a while.
Yeah.
And the funny story I tell people, John Stockton, who's obviously older and retired, he was probably dressed like me, sitting in the stands behind me, the most unassuming, older short guy. No one even knew it was him. He was just sitting there and look back and like, oh my gosh, he's right there. And you wouldn't notice him.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer. He's a legend, and his son's playing.
Mhm.
And so Scottie Pippen Jr., who's on our team, and his dad, Scottie Pippen, was at almost every home game last year, a big supporter. So the fun thing about it, and I invite people to come to South Bay games, is you never know who's going to show up. You really
Yeah.
don't know who's going to show up. You'll see some celebrities sometimes. You'll see NBA players show up and support the team. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. We got a question in the chat here. He wanted to just say how well you networked during your time at Cal State Long Beach, and if you have any recommendations for students and alumni to put themselves out there.
Yeah, for students and alumni, don't be afraid. That's the first thing. I think the best advice I give students is first for students. For students, I think the best advice is use the student card for as long as you can, because you lose that, right?
Yeah.
And so I always tell people you probably have it while you're a student and maybe 6 months after or so, because you can say you're a recent graduate. But while you're a student, people will sympathize with you. They'll empathize and they'll want to spend time. So by reaching out and letting folks know, hey, I'm a student, and I'm working on this project. I'm looking for your advice. I'm seeking your guidance. Do you have some time to, because I really would love to, to work with the Lakers someday or work in sports or something. Do you have, if someone reached out to me, sure, I'm happy to help out, especially if you're a student. I'm going to give you some time, helping each other out. And so I think definitely use that and don't be afraid. I think that's one thing, at least it's a lot easier today than it's just getting easier and easier any day. But today to reach out to folks, we're accessible online. And so I say use that to your advantage. But while you're in the program and you're in these internships and you're meeting people face to face, if you're doing your internship on site, it's really getting to know as many people as you can. Don't take anyone for granted, no matter what their job title says and everything. There are a lot of egos in sports. And when I say egos, I'm not just talking about the players. And so as many folks would know, right? And so it's not just the players. It's from anywhere from the interns to the executive team on a sports organization. I've seen some of the nicest people, and then some folks that could probably use a little help being a little nicer.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much money they make or what their job title is. And so and it goes both ways. So don't take for granted the person next to you that's in the program. Who can help you just as much as anyone who's a vice president. Both can equally want to help you or not. But don't be afraid to make those connections, have those conversations. I'm a big believer in telling people what you want to do, because you never know who's listening, who you may not think they're in a position to provide you help, but they may know someone that can. Right? You may be in a room that might say, "Oh, I want to do marketing." Well, you know what? My aunt works in marketing for XYZ. Maybe you can talk to my aunt, whatever, right? And so that there's an opportunity. But if you don't speak it out, it's hard, right? No one knows. And so I think that's my advice when navigating networking, which is not easy. It's not fun. People don't, going to these things or going to events. Sometimes but I think it happens in different spaces. It can happen online, it can happen in person. I think it's keeping your reputation strong, because those things mean a lot in this business.
Yeah, you never know what opportunities comes from just talking to someone next to you, or you, like you said, go to these events that you don't really feel like going to, but then you go, and usually you get something really great out of it. You never know.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I tell people, said every time I've always said to myself, "Oh, I don't want to go to this thing," and then I go to that thing. 99% of the time I walk away going like, "I'm glad I came."
Yeah.
For what might have just been one thing I learned or one person I met or whatever it is, almost every single time. So yeah.
No, amazing. It's been such a great chat. I have one last question for you, and I just want to know, what's the biggest lesson you have learned with your career in sport? Wow,
biggest lesson. Should have gave me that question like a month ago, so I gotta have a month to think about it right now.
Right.
Biggest
putting you on the spot here.
I know, right? Well, one of them I think obviously I shared earlier, right? About I think in what I do, at least in my corner of the world. So first thought there is really staying on top of your game at all times, right? At all times. I think that's incredibly important. The networking is very, very key, obviously, because sometimes there are politics in how decisions are made. Let's just call it what it is. It's what I call the ugly underbelly of how just the world works, not just sports, just, the world. And so I think that's one big, big lesson, making sure that you stay current in your own craft, whatever your craft is. Don't take it for granted, because that's key. It's a very competitive geography. Just Southern California in general is super competitive, especially in sports and entertainment, in any realm. So you really need to stay on top of things. And I think just in general, for other folks looking for other sides of sports, whether it's in business and in the back office, and all those things, being kind goes a long way, believe it or not. Being kind goes a long way. Sports is people are on the go. And that's the last thing too, I'll say is, if you're interested in working in this industry, working in sports, no matter, especially on a full-time career basis, it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of days, it's a lot of weekends, it's a lot of holidays. Depending what sport you'll do, you may not be around during Christmas, or you may not be around for 4th of July or Memorial Day weekend. You know, you're going to miss birthdays, you're going to miss things. And when you're in season, you know, some of these folks are tired. They're starting their day at 8 a.m. They're not coming home till 11 or midnight, you know, because they have a game day. So it's an industry of passion, because it doesn't always pay the best, as we know, until you get to a certain level.
Yeah.
So make sure you're super passionate about it and you're into it, because it's definitely going to take a toll in terms of your work-life balance, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think, again, it goes back to networking. Investigate as much as you can. That's why this program is so great, and that's why internships are great, and why I tell people intern or volunteer. You can volunteer. They love people to volunteer and just be around that vibe, because every industry has its own vibe, right? Whether you work in sports, or whether you work at a law firm, or whether you work at a school like I do. Yeah, get to see if that's your vibe and if it works for you. That's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, no, great. I think like we touched on a little the work balance. You have to be good with 2 jobs like you have to. How do you manage it?
Right. Oh, you know, I'm lucky in that right now the South Bay Lakers, not that many games.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of on the weekends, or it's in the evenings. That we probably do 4 or 5 games a month.
Yeah.
So it's during the in season. So it's not too bad.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
it hasn't.
good.
Yeah. So that is not too bad. If I ever had the privilege of moving into a role with the LA Lakers someday and doing games at Crypto, that's more games, right?
Yeah.
And so then it gets a little bit,
yeah.
right? Which I did get to fill in. I got to fill in 2018. I did 2 LA Laker games, which was exciting. And so that was fun. Yeah, so right now it's very, very manageable. But I'll tell you,
That's good. That's healthy.
yes, if it was baseball though, it would be crazy.
No,
Baseball's 81
absolutely.
home
That's
games.
wild.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's if you really love it, it's manageable. And I have a wonderful family that's supportive. I have a wonderful wife that's supportive of it. And I think that's another thing too, right? Because that, again, that balance between your professional and your personal, know the business and the industry you're getting in, and making sure that your partner, you know, or whoever you're spending your time with, you know, that they appreciate that and they're supportive of that. And those things are important to people too. So that's just general career advice, I think, in terms of what you want out of your personal life and what that's going to look like in the future, to make sure that works well with whatever you're choosing as your career.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Spot on. Well, thank you so much for everything you shared and your story, and very impressive. And we're very thankful for having you here today with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I think also there was an opportunity if I want to share my contact information, which I'm totally fine with that. I'll type it in, because I know we're on a time crunch, but feel free, if anyone wants to email me, I'm putting my email in the chat. You are, it's going out to the hosts and panelists, but, or everyone, there we go, put it to everyone. So it's jay.barquero, my last name, @gmail.com. If you look up my name, Jason Barquero, I'm probably the only one of the very few with that unique last name. I won't be hard to find on LinkedIn. You can link up with me, but I'm always happy to provide any kind of guidance, of your support to an alum or a student out there. So
thank you. It was great. So fun.
Yeah, you both. Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much for your time, and Lisa, an amazing moderator as ever. But yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing your contact info. If anyone wants to continue that conversation with Jason, please do reach out to him. And then if you want to go ahead and follow CSULB alumni, that we are on all these different social media channels, and also our website, www.csulb.edu/alumni, to, you know, make sure that you don't miss the next one, and also to be able to catch Jason's chat again. And like I said, send it out, send it far and wide. And yeah, thank you so much, both of you. And thank you everyone for joining us as well. Have a good one.
Yeah, have a good one. Bye, guys.
bye.